talk about are spotting red flags in your interview process, which should be a fun topic here. Let me just reintroduce myself. I'm Paul. I'm the CTO here at dice.com, and with me is Dave. He's a hamster expert 4, which means that he understands animal nature better than anybody in the room here. So we can talk a little bit about that when we start talking about spotting red flags in your interview process. We're going to be talking about an article that you are welcome to look at also. It's posted on Dice. We're going to talk a little bit about kind of some of the things that you should spot when you're going into your interview, because I'd love to say that all companies are honest and all interviews are great and all recruiters are above board, but you've still got to have your common sense sort of radar up, haven't you? So a couple of things we'll talk about in a little bit more detail, but just to skim through the article real quick. Disorganization and disrespect aren't a great start. A value mismatch between you and the company, things like, well, we'll pay you when we can versus your expectation of being paid on a regular basis. Bait and switch, which is you're brought in and offered a different kind of role. Maybe it was a high salary and now suddenly the one that's available is a lot less. Shady salary talk, and then high turnover of staff. Why are you looking for someone to fill this position? Well, Bob only stayed 4 weeks and the Bob number 1 stayed for 3 weeks before that. So that kind of thing. So let's get into some of these details in a little bit more. Before we start, I'll tell you a story from my own career. Very, very early on, before I realized that I was going to end up doing technology, and even if that was a thing, I did explore a number of other opportunities, particularly as I was just sort of at the end of high school. I'm like, what shall I do? I applied at a car dealership because I became very interested in, cars.
Yes.
I did not get that job, which in retrospect was probably...
Was it with, what was the one that we were talking about, the British Leyland?
It wasn't with British Leyland, no. I think it was a Ford dealer.
Oh,
actually.
okay.
Yeah. And probably why I didn't get that job is because I didn't do the things that we just talked about.
Fair.
I didn't research the company. I didn't understand the industry enough. I just piled in and went, I'm great. You should give me a job there, which didn't work. But the biggest red flag situation I had was... this is just sort of slightly before the internet. I applied for a role at a finance company and was asked to come for an interview at a hotel. Red flag number 1. Turned out to be a insurance type of organization where you had to pay for your own training. Red flag number 2. And then compensation really was based around how much you sold and whether you could add agents into your network. Red flag number 3. So having got excited about this opportunity because it looked like it was going to earn a lot, I think I really realized that this was not the opportunity for me either, because it was a sort of sketchy multi-level marketing kind of deal, and I should avoid it at all costs. So
I got roped into one of those pitches where they literally would not tell people what the job was for a good 15-20 minutes during the presentation at the beginning. And we were with a little bit rowdier crowd, and so people, about when they were getting closer to revealing what it was, people were literally just yelling at them from the audience, just like interrupting them, being like, tell us what it is, tell us what the job is, like we're done, right? And I just got, I knew what it was, and so I just got up and walked out. But they eventually,
what was it?
It was, I don't know, it's a multi-level marketing scheme. Run your own business, selling encyclopedias door to door, whatever, knives or whatever, a painting or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but it was a multi-level marketing scam. So those are right. When if they're not forthright about things, there's a reason for that. Like, they're not a company doesn't bring you in and provide all these elaborate things to if you're doing a legitimate business or place that people want to work that's not kind of scammy, there's no reason to hide those types of things.
Yes, any situation you find yourself in, and this is tricky because life is full of these situations where you find yourself in a situation where there's a high pressure sales conditions, right? And that's where you lose control over your environment. There's a sense of urgency. There's pressure to make a decision. Maybe you're in a situation where decision making is in part biased because you want to make yourself less uncomfortable than you are. Those are major red flags. And it's difficult, particularly earlier in your career, to have the confidence to recognize this in the moment and deal with it, right? Which is how people end up with timeshares. But we won't get into timeshares. Some
people really like their timeshares, I've come to find out.
Do you have a timeshare?
I don't, for that exact reason. When I went to all-inclusive resort, I think that's how they made their money.
Was it a free trip?
No, it wasn't. Just to be clear, this is completely scheduled by me. Everything. It was not. It was nothing to do with the timeshare. But I'm pretty sure how the resort made a decent amount of money, because it was a relatively good deal and it was a nice resort.
Yeah, all right.
Was selling the timeshares, people were. I mean, it was very aggressive, the sales, but it was the way they did it was kind of nice, because they did it a little bit more personally, where you had a person that was supposed to be kind of like your pseudo concierge, but their real reason was to be a salesperson.
Yes.
And I took them aside eventually. I was like, we are not going to buy a timeshare while we're here, so you better just stop. And after that, it was relatively pleasant.
Okay, good. All right.
Yeah, and the service didn't drop by. The service didn't drop either, which was surprising, because I mean, sometimes that does happen. So I mean, everybody may not have the same experience, but yeah, I was just like, we are definitely not getting to get a timeshare while we're here. No, thank you.
Yeah. So let's talk about going in eyes wide open then. First sign that the organization you're going to be working for may not be the right place for you is disorganization and disrespect. Last minute changes of job interviews. Things do pop up occasionally. I'm not saying that every disruption is an issue. Being asked to pay for things up front is sometimes a red flag. If you're, in the States, particularly as you get a little bit more senior and in-person job interviews come back, there is an expectation that you might travel to an interview. You should be really clear about who's paying for that.
Right.
Any legitimate company is going to compensate you for that travel if they want to pull you for an interview. You've got to be savvy to look at this, and we've had some feedback recently about recruiters asking candidates to sign exclusivity contracts, and you shouldn't be doing that either, right? None of that stuff. So just be careful. And I will say, the smaller the organization, sometimes it can be a little less organized, and you've got to have some idea that if you're joining a small company that might be in a high growth mode, it might feel a little bit more chaotic than, say, a large organization that has a well-oiled recruiting engine behind it, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
You should be wary of value mismatches regarding kind of what you're looking for. And again, this can be as simple as doing a little bit of research or asking during the interview, kind of what's the work-life balance expectations here? Do you get emails at the weekend that you have to deal with? All that kind of stuff can help you make sure that you understand what you're getting into. And again, if you're being asked to pay for training or you're being asked to pay for something up front, those are high red flags to me about making sure that you understand what you're getting into. Bait and switch is a tricky one because, as Dave and I have talked about before, there are organizations that will have job opportunities open, and what they're really doing is just they're talking to people and assessing, are you available for an opportunity? Is there something better that might suit you? But I think it's, if the opportunity that's offered is significantly better than the one that you end up getting talked into, that's probably a bait and switch.
Yeah, there's legitimate reasons they could say, basically when you get along well with people and you kind of click and they're like, oh, this person can get things done or has experience in these areas, they might be like, actually, we have a need over here. And a lot of that times those things are done in good faith, and the conversations seem a little bit more intentional when it seems like somebody basically was that wasn't there, and then they present some other more crappy multi-level marketing opportunity or whatever it is, right? And like, oh, be your own CEO or something like that. And you get there and you're like, CEO of what, right? And they're like, oh, just, it's just you or something like that. Like, yeah, that's not what was described on the box. That's likely a scam.
And a particular bait and switch that is more English in nature would be if you meet a slightly scraggly looking gentleman, usually with a parrot on his shoulder outside a pub, and he offers to buy you all the rum you can drink. You want to probably be careful because there's a chance you'll end up on a pirate ship.
Yeah.
With said captain standing over you saying you're in the Navy now, son.
Yeah.
Like that, which you don't want.
No.
So just avoid that. There's no such thing as free rum. And then high turnover. So pay attention and to turnover rates. That's a couple of things that the article talks about. It could indicate burnout, i.e., there's a lot of demands. It could be an indication of company culture as an issue, and it could also be an indication that the teams are in some degree of change, and that's putting stress into the organization. And again, if you're joining a larger organization, you should have done some research about where was it recently acquired. Is this a company that has a pattern of acquiring other businesses? That will give you some idea of kind of what the turnover rate might be of an organization.
Right.
Anything else on turnover?
No, I think that's it. I mean, well, I guess I would say, you can do research out there on Glassdoor, LinkedIn to some extent, talk to people if you know someone in your network that's there, Blind, Twitter, whatever it's called now. Look for like sentiment saying like, oh, I was there, or I left, or didn't have a good experience. I was there for a short amount of time. Like you want to look. I mean, turnover is just one aspect, but as you're researching the company that you should look for when you're doing that type of search. But yeah, there's a few suggestions for you. Yeah, and look, the internet's a wonderful place. You have to look through some comments to understand the context, but it also can be incredibly valuable. Right. I've lived in the States long enough now that I get those random cards sent to me in the mail. The very first thing I'm going to do is go online and see, is this legitimate? What's the angle that they're wanting to go? And there's still a lot of things that happen. And it's particularly vulnerable. You're particularly vulnerable if this is your first time through something, right? First time through a job, first time through an interview. And I give you a classic example of this, which is used a lot in the US in particular, is if you move a home and you have a home loan, or you buy an automobile here, a lot of that data, for lots of reasons I don't really understand, end up becoming public, and then you end up with a ton of mail coming in that looks like it's from the company you're dealing with, but it really technically isn't. Where they have like a little seal that has like an eagle on it and all these things, and you're like, oh, this is from your warranty is expired, Department of Homeland Warranties or something like that, right? And you're like, what the heck is that? They've gotten close to getting me once or twice. They do some pretty good research, which I think some of the stuff they do should be illegal, but it is what it is. Stay vigilant out there. That's right. And the old saying, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. So you got to be wary of this stuff. All right, we're going to look at some jobs. We're going to look at computer support specialist jobs. I don't know why we picked this. Well, and what we'll do is see if there's any red flags in these job postings. I mean, all right. One thing we didn't talk about, which I find interesting, is I don't know what the right way to describe them are. Weasel phrases. The phrase are like work in a high energy, fast paced environment. What does that mean? We don't know what we're doing, and there's going to be a lot of random work coming your way. Like thrives in ambiguity, right? I think there's those aren't necessarily red flags, because a lot of these phrases are just passed around, and everybody's like, oh, I better put that on here. But there's certain ones that you can read, and you're like, what does that actually mean in real life? Like, why would they use that phrase? So we'll look for maybe some of those in here. Again, it's the same as lots of things in life, right? You buy a house that says quaint cottage with lots of historical features. That means that it's still got the woodworm and rot that's come from there, old dilapidated, and lead plumbing. So exactly. Yep.